Let's take a few minutes to figure out how to get around in Excel. To do that, we're going to open a file. We'll go to the File menu, click on Open, and then navigate to where we've stored our Project Files folder. Now I've put mine on the desktop. You may have stored yours someplace else. And if you haven't downloaded the Project Files folder from the website yet, this would be a good time to do that. Scroll down, look for Project Files, and then open the Lesson 2 folder. And then open Navigation. Now my active cell is in cell A1, and I just want to know how to get down to the next cell in the next row. So I'm just going to hit the down arrow key on the keyboard. If I want to move right, I'll hit the right arrow on the keyboard, up arrow, and left again, left arrow. Pretty simple. The arrows point in the direction you're going to go, one cell at a time. Now there's another way to do a similar thing, but to make the point on this, I'm going to select some cells. Let me highlight these cells right here. And all I'm doing, by the way, is just holding down the mouse and dragging down and to the right with the button held down. Now notice that in this selection, as it's called, that there's a black border that goes around the whole selected area. This indicates that everything is selected inside that black border. And also, out of all the little blue cells in there, only one of them is white. That white one is the active cell. And that's what we want to keep our eye on. Now, as soon as I hit the down arrow key, that selection is going to go away. Let me reselect some cells again. If I hit right arrow or left arrow or use any of the keys, that selection just goes away. But if I want to navigate around inside those cells, now I can use the Enter key, and this also moves my active cell down, but it doesn't turn off the selection. Now watch what happens when I reach the bottom of this column. If I hit Enter again, the active cell just goes to the top of the next column. Just like that. Now if I want to go back the other direction, I can do Shift Enter. Shift Enter takes you up the column and then to the left to the next column. I can also use the Tab button to move to the right. Just like the Enter key, the Tab button allows me to move within the selection without turning the selection off. To go right to left, Shift Tab. Now at this point you might be wondering why you would ever want to do such a thing. Well, we'll talk about that in the very next video. For now, I'm just going to click the mouse. Clicking the mouse anywhere will turn off the selection, and I'll just go back up and select cell A1. Now if I'd like to move down an entire screen's worth of material at a time, I could use the Page Down button on the keyboard. The Page Up button takes me up one screen's worth. If I use the Alt key in combination with Page Up and Page Down, then I'm going to move one screen's worth of material to the right and to the left. Here's Alt Page Down. Here's Alt Page Up. If I'm working down in the worksheet someplace, my active cell now being in D17, if I quickly want to get back to cell A1, I can do Control Home. For this next part, I want to be able to see the bottom right-hand corner of all the data that I have in here. To do that, I'll use the Zoom slider and just nudge that to the left. There we go. Now, if I wanted to quickly move to the last cell in the used range, I could do Control End. And see how that jumps down there to that last cell? I'll snap this back up to 100% magnification. And then Control Home to get back to cell A1. Now let's say that I wanted to go to a specific cell. Let's say I wanted to go to C10. I could do Control G on the keyboard, which opens the Go To dialog box, and just type in C10. When I click OK, shazam, there we are. Here's another way to do a similar thing. I'm going to click in the Name box right here and type in the cell name that I want to navigate to. In this case, let's go to B3. Hit Enter, and there we go. Now if you're wondering how you're ever going to remember all those, well, don't worry about it. Actually, most people go through most of their Excel career with just knowing 3 or 4 of these things and do just fine. But if you want to, you can go into the Project Files folder and then open the Lesson 2 folder and open Printable Notes. And here you'll find a PDF file with all the navigation techniques that we're talking about in the video. You can print that out and just put it next to your keyboard like a cheat sheet. Now let's have a look at how to get around by using the mouse. To do this, I'm going to make my screen smaller by using the Restore Down button. Here we go. And I'm interested in these two arrows right here, the scroll down and scroll right arrow. Take a look at the row numbers along the left-hand side of the screen as I click the down arrow. Each time I click the down arrow, it moves me down in the worksheet one row at a time. Now watch the letters at the top of each of the columns while I click the right arrow. Each time you click the right arrow, it takes you one column to the right. There's also an up arrow, which, as you might guess, would take you up one row at a time. And down here there's a left pointing arrow that will move you one column to the left each time you click it. Now if you're impatient, you can just hold these buttons down and really zoom across. Here we're going down pretty fast. Or you can just drag the scroll sliders. If you want to move one screen's worth of material to the right, you can just click on this empty space here between the scroll bar and the scroll arrow. On the other side of the scroll bar, you can click to go back to the left. If you want to go down one screen's worth of material, you can just click in the blank space below the vertical scroller. Or to go up, you click in the blank space above the vertical scroller. What I'm going to show you now falls into the category of nice to know, but not really essential for beginners. Feel free to skip this part if you like, and then revisit it when you become more familiar with the navigation techniques we've talked about already. In this part of the video, we'll examine using the keyboard to navigate in the ribbon. We'll accomplish this by using something called keyboard accelerators. Keyboard accelerators allow you to use the keyboard to navigate to any tab or command in the ribbon. Normally this would require a mouse to get to, but here's how they work. Press the Alt key. As you can see, this places small letters below each of the tabs and numbers below each of the quick access toolbar commands. These tiny letters and numbers are called key tips. When you type a key tip corresponding to a tab, Excel takes you to that tab, where it then places other key tips below each of the commands. For example, here the key tip for going to the Insert tab is N. When we press N on the keyboard, it takes us to the Insert tab, where we can see that each of the commands now enjoys its own key tip. So here, if I want to insert some Smart Art, I can just press M on the keyboard. And this opens the Smart Art graphic dialog box. Key tips are so handy that after a while you'll probably begin to memorize a few of the ones that you use most commonly. For example, that Smart Art dialog box, if I used Smart Art all the time, after a while I'd begin to remember that I could go to Alt, N, M, and just fire that right up. Pretty cool, right? Well, before you jump in here, there are a few things you need to know in order to avoid some confusion. To demonstrate, I'd like to repeat what we just did with a couple of twists. I'm going to go back to cell A1, and here I intend to type in the name of my company, Muddy Run Whitewater Rafting. Before I do that, though, I'm going to go looking for a key tip. So I'm going to go to Alt and N to bring up the Insert tab. And as I'm looking that over, I go, I really don't need to use any of these. I'll just go ahead and type in the name of my company in cell A1. Now, forgetting that I have key tips showing on the screen, as soon as I begin to type in Muddy, when I hit the M, guess what's going to happen? Sure enough, there I bring up the Smart Art graphic dialog box. So when you have key tips showing, you want to make sure that you either use one or that you close them out so that you're not seeing them. Well, how do you do that? Well, let me do this again. Alt and N. In order to close those, you just hit Escape on the keyboard. Hit Escape again, and you're home free.